Tonight's program will be focused on Navy Closure Task Force's safety programs. After our presentation, we'll have a Q&A session, which will end promptly at 6 p.m. To submit your questions, please use the Q&A feature in the Microsoft Teams, and be sure to submit your name. You can submit questions at any time during the program. So I'll be your moderator tonight. I am Lieutenant Commander Daniel Puckett, the Operations Officer for Navy Closure Task Force Red Hill. With me is our Safety Officer.
Good evening. Aloha, I'm Lieutenant Commander Tony Allen. I'm Industrial Hygiene and Safety Officer for Navy Closure Task Force.
Before we get to the details of our safety programs, we want to share with you some of the various avenues we use to communicate and engage with the public. We obviously have our webinars that we're doing now, but we also have podcasts, information booths, open houses, community meetings, partner updates, and so much more. All that can be found on the Navy Closure Task Force website and our mobile application. Tonight's agenda, we'll go through Navy Operational Risk Management, Hearing Conservation Program, our Respiratory Protection Program, Confined Space Program, our Fall Protection Program. We'll finish up with our informational resources and, of course, a Q&A session. Let's get started with Navy Operational Risk Management. I'll turn it over to Commander Allen.
Thanks, Dan. Just a little bit about me real quick. I'm an Industrial Hygiene Officer in the Navy. I have been for 16 years, and I'm glad to be here tonight. Glad to share the information with you today about our commands programs that we utilize to ensure our workers and contractors' safety while operating within Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility. How do we get to these safety programs? Well, the Navy Closure Task Force was established to safely and expeditiously close and decommission the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility. This mission entails cleaning the fuel tanks, plus cleaning, removing, and disposing of the pipelines. As part of establishing the command, a baseline industrial hygiene survey was performed to determine what specific safety programs would be required to protect our personnel performing the wide variety of jobs to complete our mission. When the command was fully manned and operations commenced, our industrial hygiene survey was conducted. The results of this baseline survey dictated that we established the safety programs that we will discuss today. Utilizing risk management processes through job hazard and exposure analysis, we implement the hierarchy of controls and continuously observe and monitor the programs and mitigations put in place for effectiveness. We will first go over the risk management program process and the hierarchy of controls to touch base on each of our safety programs afterwards. Next slide. Okay, we're good here. Okay. So risk management, what's risk management? Risk management, we have our job here at Red Hill. We have to identify the hazards. We assess the risk associated with the hazard. And we have to determine, is that risk acceptable? Or should we develop mitigation processes to reduce that risk to an acceptable level? We develop the controls and put them in place, make a risk decision to see if we got the risk reduced to an acceptable level. If we feel like we've got good controls in place, we will implement them. And once implementing the controls, we continue with the job and continuously reassess the effectiveness of our controls. This is our supervising and evaluate. At any point, if we determine that our controls are not sufficient, we can stop and reassess and mitigate and start over. That is the 5-step risk management process. What that goes hand in hand with that are the risk control hierarchy. Best thing we would be able to do would be to eliminate the hazard. We can't always eliminate the hazard. Can't remove it. Sometimes we still have to continue with the job. Sometimes we could substitute. You could use a substitution method, which is use a different material, different chemical, or different type of machine to reduce the hazard and the risk associated with such. Oftentimes we can use engineering controls. We could modify the machine itself. We could build, like say, a platform or a barrier to protect our workers from the hazard. But if those don't work, we can also utilize administrative controls. Administrative controls are, as they sound, administrative processes. We write instructions. We limit work hours or change shifts to accommodate safer work times. And we put up signs, we post signs identifying the hazards, letting personnel know that they are going into a hazardous space. And the last step in the hierarchy of controls is actually the utilization of PPEs. When we're unable to reduce the hazard to an acceptable level, utilizing the first few steps of the hierarchy of controls, we will utilize PPE. Multiple forms of PPE are utilized at our Red Hill facility. The basic kit, just to go into the facility, we have to have a hard hat, we have to have our safety glasses, we have to have hearing protection, we have a reflective vest, we have flashlights, and we have our safety protective boots. That is the minimum kit that is required just to go into the Red Hill facility. Other jobs require different specific PPE, and we will get into those forms of PPE as we discuss the programs.
Now, Tony, I see a PPE at the bottom of the hierarchy. Does that mean PPE is not important?
That's a great question, Dan. That does not mean PPE is not important. That just means PPE is the last line of defense to protect our personnel from the hazard. We would rather eliminate it or substitute or provide engineering or administrative controls. PPE is very important. It's just not the number one priority for eliminating hazards.
Thanks for the clarification.
Great question. Next slide. First program we will discuss this evening is our hearing conservation program. Hearing conservation, what is that? That is to protect our personnel against hearing loss. Noise-induced hearing loss symptoms may include speech sounds distorted or muffled, difficulty understanding speech, especially with background noise, muffling of sounds after noise exposure. Say you've been in a loud shop, you go down the shop, it's hard to hear. Ringing and buzzing in your ears. These are all symptoms of noise-induced hearing loss. So hearing loss prevention includes noise monitoring. As part of our baseline industrial hygiene survey, we do a noise assessment. We analyze the level of noise with each particular job and whether you have to use single hearing protection or double hearing protection, i.e. earplugs and muffs or just earplugs alone. Those are the controls for the noise, that PPE. The further controls for the noise, as we come back to our hierarchy of controls. Can we stop the noise? Engineering controls, get rid of it. Administrative controls, we identify the areas. We hang up our signs, identify the noise hazard areas, and then we utilize our PPE when we are unable to avoid the noise. Part of our hearing conservation program is an annual test. And that annual test is an audiometric test. And what that test does is at initiation, your baseline hearing test. And then every year after that, we will test you in the audio booth. Some of you may have had them. You go in the booth, put the headset on, listen for the tones. That is an annual test that compares back to your baseline to see if you have had any hearing loss over that year. That's how we determine, or one way we have to determine if our hearing conservation program is working properly. Next slide. Next program. The next program we'll get into this evening is our respiratory protection program. Respiratory protection program is what it sounds like. Protect your lungs, protect your respiratory system from any fumes or vapors or any airborne particulates or airborne hazards. So we're back to the hazard evaluation. We assess every job for the hazards that are produced by the jobs that we have to do: tank cleaning, pipe cleaning, fuel vapors. That's what we deal with for the most part with those. So respirators are what we use to protect our personnel in those situations. We only utilize NIOSH approved respirators. That's your National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. We're not allowed to use any other kind of respirators. The respirators we use on our sites are, for the most part, air purifying and organic vapor. So those are the two big things, the two different kind of particles and materials we get into. We have half face, We have full face air purifying respirators, depending on if you're in a whatever environment you're in dictates what kind of respirator you need to wear. There are other respirator types, but most of the ones we use are basically your air purifying respirators. These also require medical evaluations annually to make sure that you're still fit to be in a respiratory protection program, and also annual fit testing for the respirator. The fit testing is an evaluation to determine whether we get a proper tight fitting respirator to your face. That way you can be best protected against the airborne hazards. If it's not tight fitting, then it's not going to protect you. Training goes along with the same time when we're fit testing, perform training. We train personnel on the hazards that they may be introduced to when they do the job. We train them on wearing and removing the respirator. We train them on cleaning the respirator, train them on cartridge change out cycles. Multiple phases of training go into ensuring that our personnel know how to take care of, wear, maintain, and store their respirators so that they can best protect them in the work environment. Slide. The next program we'll get into is our confined space program. We're dealing with cleaning the fuel tanks. The fuel tanks are considered confined space. So what's a confined space? Confined space is any space that's large enough for the individual or a person to access. It allows them to enter or perform work. It is not meant, a confined space is not meant for permanent human occupancy, not continuous. You just go in, do your work, and get out. The confined space has limited access or limited egress, limited means of getting in and out of the space. So that this is not only access based, but it also does reduce the ventilation in the space. The other type of confined space is a permit required confined space. You shift from just a straight confined space to a permit required confined space when you introduce atmospheric hazards, or the space may contain a material that can potentially engulf the member, or the space has an internal configuration that slopes or slants or may entrap or asphyxiate the member, or the space just has some other form of recognized serious safety hazard. This is what makes up a confined space. So your atmospheres, your engulfment, and limited entry and access. Those are the hazards that we really worry about in confined space. So when we're dealing with confined spaces, we have a team. You have the people who work, you have the people that oversee. So the roles of the personnel working in and around the confined space. You have your authorized entrance. These personnel have been trained on confined space entry, and they've been trained to do their job safely within those space. The attendant is basically like the gatekeeper for the confined space. He monitors the environment. He controls who goes and comes. He makes sure the entrants are wearing the proper PPE for going into the confined space. And also you have the supervisor, your entry supervisor. The entry supervisor is over all of it. This individual can stop the work. They make sure your attendant is doing their job properly and they have the right equipment. The equipment's calibrated. They make sure any of the PPE the personnel are utilizing is the right PPE to do the job within the confined space. And they can also just shut the process down if it's required. If something is off, then they shut the process down. And then you have your rescue personnel. Your rescue personnel have to be properly trained and able to respond in any event should we have to recover or rescue someone within the space. So those are the responsibilities and roles of personnel working within our confined spaces. So you just don't go into the confined space. As I mentioned, we have atmospheric. Your attendant has atmospheric monitoring. Atmospheric monitoring is continuous while we have personnel in the confined space. We have atmospheric monitoring equipment. An example we have is I have 5 gas analyzers that monitor the oxygen levels, carbon monoxide levels, lower explosive limits, volatile organic compounds, and hydrogen disulfide. So these are hazards within the atmosphere that we have to monitor and make sure our personnel working within the confined space are wearing the proper equipment to protect them against that. Also, ventilation, make sure that it's easier to force air into a space to replenish fresh air than it is to exhaust bad air from a space. So make sure we have good ventilation into spaces. And then the permit requirements. So permit requirements. We have marine chemists who write the permits for our permit required confined spaces. They write the parameters, the limits that are acceptable for individuals to work within the limits. The attendant and entry supervisors monitor those limits while we have personnel within the space. And if those limits are being close to exceeded or exceeded, then we have to stop work, reevaluate the process, and get the limits back within compliance. So that's why the work permits are in place, permit requirements. And then we have the emergency response. Back to what we mentioned and the other roles and responsibilities. We have quarterly rescue drills to demonstrate and maintain proficiency for recovering personnel who may have had a medical issue or may have slipped or fallen within the space. So, and we coordinate with emergency services as needed if we should have a legitimate actual casualty within the facility. Next slide. Last program we will cover is our fall protection program. So we're back to hazardous recognition. We always help the participants identify the fall hazards in the work area. That's what fall protection is. We're working within the facility. The biggest concerns we have are working within our tanks and our tank cleaning crews. So we have our hierarchy of controls that are always utilized. So introduce the hierarchy of controls. There are fall protection, which prioritizes measures like eliminating the hazard. We can't always eliminate the hazard, so we have to push forward with the work. So we would rather not rely on PPE, but the way the job is, we have to utilize PPE. PPE we'll be discussing in this one is that we utilize is our personal fall arrest system, which the personal fall arrest system entails an anchor, your body support or your harness or your connector, which is your lanyard, and descent and rescue paraphernalia, rescue equipment. So your anchor is what you are attached to should you have to wear your personal fall arrest system. Our anchors are all certified by structural and mechanical engineers. So that is the standard that requires those. Our body harnesses and lanyards, those are checked at each use by the individual as before we go into any fall arrest or fall situation. Also, working aloft or working at heights within the tunnel or anything over 6 feet off the ground on scaffolding is when we would have to use our personal fall arrest systems. So as I said, they have to be inspected before every use. There are also periodic inspections throughout the year by the competent person, your fall protection program manager. It's when you have to get to the point of utilizing your PPE, the inspections are critical because we have been unable to utilize the hierarchy controls to reduce the risk involved with the hazard. So when we're relying on this piece of equipment, it's essential that you check it.
Tony, thanks for all the information about the fall protection program. I have this harness in front of me. Can anybody just put this on and go into a space where there's a fall hazard?
No, that's a great question. You have to have your fall protection user training to utilize this. You don't have to be a competent person to be a worker. You're a competent person oversees your programs and stuff, but you have to have specific training on how to use, how to check, and how to service or how to remove it from service. So that's a bare minimum before you utilize a personal fall protection system.
Thanks for extra information.
Thank you. Next slide. This slide basically just goes over some resources from our Navy Safety Command. That's it. This covers all of our safety programs that we have here. So we can go into our question and answer session.
All right, let's move into our Q&A session, which will run no later than until 6 p.m. Also for the audience, this webinar will be posted on our website and mobile app within the next 48 hours. So if you missed some information early on, you can grab it later on via the recording that will be posted. All right, so we'll go on to our first question that we received. How often do the teams review all the safety plans and programs?
How often are the safety programs reviewed? We do an annual, it's part of an annual safety program review. Or anytime a job changes or whatever, we have to reevaluate and make sure our safety programs are in place to cover those jobs. I say job, or anytime a new hazard or a new program is introduced, not just a job, any piece of it.
Right. So yeah, I think you'd say that we probably continually review our safety programs and plans, and no longer than annually.
It is. It as long as the job is fluid, and that's no joke. I mean, it's not what we're dealing with, but you have to continuously evaluate your programs.
Excellent. All right, we'll move on to the next question that we have. How often are the plans and programs rehearsed or practiced?
Rehearsed or practiced. We have safety briefs before every job. Every day, every morning, there's a safety brief. And emergency services, or what, like we talked about with the recovery for in the incidents of a fall within the tank for recovery. So those are quarterly. They do the drills to demonstrate proficiency quarterly for recovery of personnel within that. But every job goes through an operational planning phase. And during that phase, we identify the hazards. And before every job starts and every day when our personnel get on site, we have a safety brief to discuss the high points and all the safety points that we need to keep in our own for each job daily. So,
right. All right, we'll go to our next question. Tony, I think I'm going to grab this one. Do you have safety officers on site daily at all work sites? Yes, we do. Commander Allen is on site almost every day. He has a counterpart, an assistant safety officer that is also out there. And all of our contractors have safety officers as part of their team on site that is performing work. So we have a significant number and a layered defense of safety officers constantly monitoring all of our job sites, ensuring the highest level of safety for all the folks that work inside of our facility. All right, moving on to the next question. Who oversees the overall safety program?
Our safety program, like
yes, sir. Who oversees our safety program?
Whoever we fall under Navy Region Hawaii, and then under Commander Navy Installation Command. So that's our basically our chain of command. Now, the Navy has its Naval Safety Command, but that's our chain of command for oversight. So someone would come review me from Command or Naval Installation Command. They would send their safety director out to evaluate our programs.
All right, thanks.
One question from online is, has NCTF had any mishaps since you've been, since the command has stood up?
We have had no mishaps or injury of our personnel within the facility that were the lines OSHA reportable or Navy Safety Command reportable in our risk management assessments. We've had no reportable mishaps for our personnel.
Another question is, does the safety program only apply to Navy and civilian personnel, or does that extend to the contractors who are working on site?
Oh no, the contractors, all of us fall under our Navy instructions. We have our Navy safety instruction. It's a great question, absolutely great question. But when you get down to the reference where our safety instructions come from, they all come from OSHA. The baseline reference is all OSHA. And absolutely, the contractors fall under those same safety instructions. They have, yes, the short answer is yes. Thank you.
And then do you have a lot of PPE on the table? Can you kind of go through what each of those are and what
Absolutely.
they're used for?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So I stay seated or stand up. This is just our basic example of a reflective vest. That's just for visibility. Everybody knows, everybody who is understanding of where Red Hill is and what it is, it's a tunnel. It's a cave with the accesses. So if the lights go out, I want to be able to shine my flashlight that I have at all times and find you. If it's in the dark, you have a reflective gear. It's one of your basic kits. Other pieces of equipment we have are for your hearing protection. We have different types of insertable earplugs. You have foamies. These are triple flange earplugs. These are just foam inserts. You receive proper training when you go through your hearing conservation program training on how to utilize them. If the noise gets to double hearing protection requirement, or if people just don't like having earplugs stuck in their ears, we have noise hazard muffs, circumaural muffs. You can wear them. Those are a couple of examples of what we have to protect their hearing. I just have my basic set of my safety glasses here. These fit over my prescription glasses, so they can wear those, vented goggles, any other kind of goggles, depending on what the situation requires. If it's a moisture or wet situation, you have the non-vented goggles to prevent the moisture from getting in your eyes. On the side closest to Dan there, we have two examples of respirators. We have a half-face air purifying respirator on top with organic vapor and particulate P100 particulate filters. And here we have a full face respirator with organic vapor and particulate filters that are plugged into it. Those are, like I said, those are our respiratory protection factors. Difference being one has a greater protection factor than the other, the half face of 10, the full face of 50, but also you can see the face shield. Our personnel cleaning the tanks, they go into the tanks, they're wearing a full face respirator. Let's say if I'm working out within the tunnel, not inside the tank where I'm cleaning the tank, and there's not a lot of vapors or anything around my face, I don't require a full face respirator. So I'll wear the half face respirator. And then I have the other monitoring equipment that we discussed. I have an example of this is just my Mini Ray 3000. This only measures VOCs for atmosphere. And the smaller one is my 5-gas monitor that we utilize. And then up front, we have our personal fall arrest system, which is assembled. This is a double hook lanyard. This is actually a 6-foot lanyard. So going through this, when you go through your checks, you want to check, make sure. So you can't just open one. You have to have double safeties on here, these, so you don't slip and inadvertently open your hook and release yourself from your anchor point. Also, one of the checks is just, you check your manufacturer's label, make sure it's still legible. If it's not legible, it's a down. You check all of your straps. All your straps for frays, nicks, cuts, anything that might compromise the integrity of the strap. You check all your metal parts for sharp edges and burrs, because they'll cut your strap and they're, again, compromise the integrity. And then this is your harness that goes over your chest and around your body, and then fastens along the upper part of your thighs. Your lanyard connects to the back of your back of your harness. That's about the full kit. Have what we wear every day, our minimum kit, and then other pieces that are specific to jobs. Thank you for the question. A great question.
Another question is, are all the PPE on the table used for the same operations, like for tank cleaning and pipeline operations, or are only some of them used for specific operations?
That's a great question. Each job has its own job hazard analysis, and during that hazard analysis, we identify required PPE for that job. So some jobs If I'm working on a level where I have no risk of fall, we don't have to put this big thing on here, so we don't have to worry about that. If I'm working within the tank, yes, you wear it. You wear your respirators for cleaning and everything, but not every job requires all of the PPE. Short question. PPE is job specific, or hazard specific, I should say.
Is
Thank
there, is there a standard PPE that every worker is required to use upon entering?
Standard PPE, yes, our standard kit. If I'm going in the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility, I will have my reflective vest. I will have a set of hearing protection. I will have a set of eye protection. I will have a hard hat, and I will have protective shoes. And then, of course, we don't run around in shorts. We wear long pants, stuff like that. But you have your basic kit, and you have to have a flashlight too in case the lights go out. There is the basic kit for PPE. Thank you.
To the audience out there, if there are any other questions, please feel free to submit them via the Q&A feature. We have answered all the ones that we have received so far. So if you've got any further questions, please submit them. We'll stand by for a few minutes to receive any further questions. And if not, we will wrap up our webinar for today and we'll get it posted online. All right, well, we have not received any further questions. Thank you all for being here and watching our webinar series on Navy Collision Task Force safety programs. If you do have any questions that you weren't able to get into the chat today, please feel free to log into our website or our mobile app and send them over to our public affairs office, and they might become part of our next FAQ that we send out. Again, thank you all for being here. It's been a pleasure hosting, and thank you.
Thank you. Well,